It all starts in a desert where a lone child is walking, chewing on a human finger, and searching for his mother. A few miles away, a car drives down a road that abruptly ends in the middle of the desert. The driver, a man named Wyndham, steps out and continues on foot. Wyndham is a photographer who has come to capture the solar eclipse. After taking a few pictures and noticing the day is coming to an end, he tries to return to his car. However, unexpectedly, he encounters a lost and frightened boy. Wyndham offers to help, but the boy seems uninterested and points in the direction where he lost his parents before walking away. Despite the boy's resistance, Wyndham follows, hoping to help him find his way. But the boy rudely refuses his support and disappears, leaving Wyndham alone in the desert as night falls. Stranded and with no way back to civilization, Wyndham lies down on the ground but struggles to sleep, his mind reliving the day's events. Suddenly, he hears strange sounds. Following the noise, he soon discovers stakes with ropes strung between them, and bottles hanging that produce a melodic chime. Ahead of him is a large canyon, and at its bottom stands a wooden house with a woman wandering around it, singing. Wyndham calls for help, but the woman enters the house, seemingly ignoring his pleas. He spots an iron ladder leading down into the canyon and begins to descend. Halfway down, the iron ladder gives way to a rope ladder. Wyndham carefully climbs down and approaches the house. After knocking persistently on the door with no answer, Wyndham opens it himself and steps inside. The woman, standing at the stove, greets him calmly, as if she had been expecting him. She offers him dinner, and although Wyndham initially refuses, she places a bowl of soup in front of him at the table. Grateful for her hospitality, Wyndham sits down, but he continues to ask questions about how to leave this strange place. He tells her about the boy he met and asks for water. The woman, named Alina, suggests that he rest until morning, and Wyndham gratefully accepts her care. He lies down in the bed she points out, observing her as she tidies herself, noting that she is young and beautiful. The next morning, he gathers his things and heads outside, hoping to find a way home. Strangely, he cannot find the rope ladder he had descended the previous day. Without it, reaching the iron section of the ladder is impossible. Wyndham returns to the house, and taking out his camera, he begins photographing the surroundings and the strange drawings on the canyon walls. Everything appears quite gloomy, reminding him of death in all its forms. He then notices Alina, who is busy repairing the roof, and asks her about the missing ladder. However, she either doesn't understand what he's talking about or pretends not to. Her words imply that there are other residents around, but she doesn't reveal anything directly. Disappointed, Wyndham walks around the canyon, periodically calling for help, but no one responds. Later, Alina asks him to undress so she can wash his clothes, saying it wouldn't be proper to return home so dirty. Reluctantly, Wyndham complies, having no other choice. That night, he struggles to sleep again and goes outside to search for a way out, but there is still none. In the morning, he searches the house and finds a hammer. He tries to use it to climb the canyon wall, but just as he's making some progress, he notices movement above. Suddenly, a chicken carcass falls from above, causing him to lose his balance and fall. Wyndham regains consciousness in the darkness, his leg injured by the hammer. He cries out in pain. Alina rushes to help him, but she remains evasive, avoiding his questions about the children he saw on the cliff. For several days, Wyndham drifts in and out of consciousness, gripped by fever, unable to tell night from day, unsure if he's truly seeing children around him or if it's all a hallucination. Eventually, the day of recovery arrives. Limping, Wyndham makes his way outside and demands that Alina tell the children above to pull him out of the canyon, but once again, she pretends not to understand him. She offers him to stay, promising to take care of him and ensure his well-being, but Wyndham doesn't need this. He wants to return home to his work. He rudely pushes Alina away, rejecting any help. Examining his leg, he realizes that it will be a long time before he can use it fully again. Suddenly, he hears voices from above. Looking up, he sees the boy, holding a little girl by the hand. The pair cheerfully ask how they can help. Upon learning that Wyndham wants to climb out, the boy promises to bring ropes and pull him up with his winch. However, before leaving, the boy asks a rather strange question about Wyndham's favorite color. Wyndham replies that it's red and begs them to hurry. The boy and girl leave, and Wyndham checks his wallet in his pocket, not intending to return for his other belongings. Suddenly, a rope falls from above, and the same boy advises him to tie himself tightly, which Wyndham does. They begin to pull him up, and Wyndham starts anticipating his rescue, but halfway up, the rope suddenly stops, dangling over the canyon. Wyndham screams and tries to climb the rope himself, but he lacks the strength and ends up hanging helplessly under the merciless sun. He regains consciousness from moisture hitting him. Looking up, he sees the boy spraying him with a hose, mocking the helpless man. Several other children appear on the cliff, ranging from very young to older teens. They are all dressed in clothes obviously taken from other people and behave inappropriately, taunting Wyndham. The children start swinging the rope, causing him to crash into the canyon walls. Instinctively, he calls out for help from Alina and sees her angrily shouting at the foolish children. But after another blow to the wall, Wyndham loses consciousness again. That night, Wyndham wakes up in bed and immediately tries to get up. Alina doesn't understand where he is headed, but Wyndham is determined to escape. The woman explains that the children are homeless, gathered together in the desert and surviving as best they can. Neither of them notices that while they talk, the children stand on the cliff, watching as the house's windows burn. The next day, Wyndham watches as Alina releases a bird, envying its ability to fly. She brings him a spare set of clothes from somewhere, and although he didn't ask for them, he is touched by her care. Time passes, and one day, Wyndham plants a small garden at the bottom of the canyon. Occasionally, the children bring them various items, food and drinks, which surprises Wyndham since there are no stores around. He doesn't understand their behavior. First they feed him, then they mock him. But Alina accepts it all as normal. Wyndham becomes more involved in the household, marveling at Alina's quiet demeanor. One night, he tries to ask her questions, but their conversation is interrupted by cries from the yard. Alina advises Wyndham not to go outside when the children behave like that, but he rushes out into the night. He sees the boys dressed in outlandish clothes, gathered around the house, taunting and pushing him, then suddenly disappearing into the darkness. Frustrated, Wyndham demands answers from Alina. Who are these children? Why do they live here? And why does she stay in this horrible place? But Alina remains calm, not admitting that she is, in a sense, a prisoner too. That evening, she comes to Wyndham, and starved for female attention, he eagerly welcomes her. Time passes, and the first sprouts begin to appear in Wyndham's garden. One day, the boy in the cap calls to him from above, now seemingly friendly, and promises to bring some soda. Wyndham returns to his plants and, unexpectedly, finds a wedding ring and car keys buried in the sand. That evening, Alina shows Wyndham a portrait of a woman, calling her the first mother. She then confesses that she is expecting his child. Stunned, Wyndham cannot believe what he's hearing. He never wanted to have children, especially in a place like this, and with a woman he barely knows. He yells at Alina, but he realizes he has no choice but to accept the situation. The next morning, Wyndham finds his garden destroyed by local birds, but Alina willingly helps him replant, earning his gratitude. Gradually, life in the house begins to fall into some semblance of order. Alina runs the household, while Wyndham exercises and works on recovering the strength in his leg. One day, the boy in the cap visits again, showing great curiosity and asking Wyndham many questions. Wyndham asks him to help Alina, explaining that she is going to have a child and they will need a doctor. He also asks the boy to bring some rope and something heavy to use as a counterweight. Wyndham plans to climb out and take them to the city, where he can take care of Alina and the boy. The boy promises to do everything when everyone is asleep or gone, but before long, one of the older boys appears and takes him away. Later, Wyndham tells Alina that the boy wants to study, that he is smart, different from the others, and wants to live a different life. Wyndham expresses his desire to help both the boy and her, but Alina reacts strangely. She tries to understand exactly what Wyndham is missing here. When he mentions freedom, Alina is puzzled. After all, no one is stopping him from doing anything here. Isn't that freedom? Wyndham then tells her about the outside world, recalling the ocean and a cheeseburger. Alina has no idea what that is, so Wyndham explains the dish to her. The woman admits that her mother used to say mirages live outside, but here in the desert, everything is real. Wyndham takes out his camera and shows Alina the photos he took on the day he arrived in the canyon. Surprisingly, what captivates her is not the solar eclipse, but a random shot of him in the car with music playing in the background. That night, Wyndham is plagued by nightmares, haunted by the terrifying faces of the children mocking someone. The next morning, he is jolted awake by Alina's terrible scream coming from the yard. Rushing outside, Wyndham is horrified to see the boy in the cap crucified over the canyon on wires, while the savage children stand on the cliff laughing. Alina suddenly declares that her brothers would never commit such an atrocity and accuses Wyndham of killing her son. Without warning, she strikes him on the head with a wooden board. When Wyndham regains consciousness, he finds himself locked in a cage. Despite his desperate pleas and begging, Alina has no intention of setting him free. She feeds him like an animal, and the children gather to watch his misery. One day, Wyndham spots a girl standing on the cliff. Unlike the others, she is clearly an outsider. He manages to catch her attention, but he's too terrified to shout, fearing he might wake Alina. Whispering urgently, he begs the girl to get help. She understands him, promises to do what she can, and leaves, assuring him she will return soon. Wyndham waits in tense anticipation, hiding and watching as the heavily pregnant Alina continues her chores. Suddenly, he hears screams and sees the savage children catching the girl. To his horror, they drag her to the edge of the cliff and kill her in a brutal display, right before his eyes. As time passes, Wyndham remains trapped in the cage, forced to witness strange and unnatural rituals performed by Alina, her children, and her brothers. One day, Wyndham surprises Alina by telling her that he wants to stay with her forever. He declares his desire to raise their child together, to love Alina as his queen, and to teach their child everything he knows. He promises to give himself completely, insisting that this is his choice. However, Alina laughs at the mention of choice. She tells him he never had one. He was merely a seed blown into the desert by chance, and the child is hers alone. She informs Wyndham that he will remain in the cage until the baby is born, after which nothing in the desert goes to waste. The day of the birth finally arrives. Alina screams in agony from inside the house while Wyndham paces in the cage. Desperate for help, Alina reaches out to him, begging for assistance as she has never experienced such a difficult labor before. Reluctantly, she releases Wyndham from the cage, and he does his best to comfort her and ease the pain. The children watch silently from the cliffs above, observing the scene unfold. In the midst of the chaos, Wyndham notices a ladder descending from above, offering a possible escape. But as Alina cries out in pain, he chooses to stay by her side. The child is born during a solar eclipse, and Wyndham holds the baby girl in his arms, overwhelmed with joy at becoming a father. He kisses his daughter tenderly. Alina pleads for the child, and when Wyndham gives her the baby, she promises to feed and protect her until the day she becomes the new mother. Alina explains that the baby will fulfill her purpose, just as Wyndham has now fulfilled his. At that moment, one of the boys sneaks up behind Wyndham and slits his throat, his voice filled with a twisted sense of reverence. He assures the dying man that he is doing it for the mother. Wyndham collapses, his life ebbing away. Later, Alina gathers Wyndham's belongings and packs them into a chest. She then turns to her newborn daughter, reassuring her that everything will be fine. As time passes, Wyndham's body decays in the yard, gradually turning to dust and sprouting grass. This is where the unusual story ends, with the desolate desert reclaiming its own.